I woke up to the same heavy silence that had become my constant companion. The house was too quiet, as if it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I had spent days oscillating between anger, disbelief, and numbness. The betrayal had shaken me to my core, but there was a part of me, deep down, that still couldn't let go. I kept asking myself why. Why couldn't I walk away? Why was I still holding on to the memory of what we had instead of focusing on the reality of what we were now? The questions didn't have answers. And every time I tried to get clarity, I found myself spiraling deeper into uncertainty. I had convinced myself that I needed space, that I needed time to think, but the more time passed, the more I realized that I was stalling. I was avoiding the inevitable. The decision I had been putting off was now impossible to avoid. I needed to confront the truth of what had happened between us. When I looked at him now, I didn't see the man I once loved. Instead, I saw someone who had broken every promise, who had shredded the trust that had been the foundation of our relationship. His eyes, once warm, once full of understanding, now seemed empty, distant. It was like he was still there, physically, but the connection we had once shared was gone. I had tried to block out the pain, to go through the motions of daily life, but nothing felt real anymore. Every word he said felt like a lie, and every touch felt like a betrayal. I could no longer separate the person he had become from the person I thought I knew. There was no way to reconcile the man I loved with the one who had caused me so much hurt. He kept trying to talk to me, to apologize, to beg for another chance, but his words were just that. Words. Empty promises, meaningless apologies. They held no weight anymore. I couldn't trust him, and worse, I couldn't even bring myself to believe that he could change. People don't change overnight, and the trust that had been shattered didn't magically rebuild itself. What was worse was that every time he spoke, every time he tried to make excuses, I felt more distant from him. The anger was replaced by a deeper, more painful feeling, indifference. It was as if I had already detached myself from him emotionally, but my body was still stuck, still unable to escape. It was the worst kind of numbness, the kind that made you question everything you had ever believed in. I didn't know how much longer I could live like this. I couldn't keep pretending that things were fine when they were anything but. It felt like we were stuck in some endless loop where nothing could be fixed, nothing could be salvaged. The weight of it was too much to bear. And yet, I still found myself looking for a way out, a way to find peace, whether it was with him or without him. I didn't know what the right choice was anymore. I didn't know if I should forgive him, try to rebuild what had been broken, or if I should walk away and leave it all behind. But even as I thought about leaving, I realized something important. Leaving him wouldn't erase the pain. It wouldn't erase the fact that I had been betrayed by the person I trusted most in the world. The more I thought about it, the more I understood that forgiveness wasn't about him. It wasn't about giving him another chance to hurt me. Forgiveness was for me, for my own peace of mind. But that didn't make it any easier. How could I forgive him when the scars were still fresh, when the wound was still open? How could I ever look at him the same way again? I had spent so much time focusing on what he had done to me, but I hadn't stopped to think about what this had done to me as a person. How had this betrayal changed me? Had it destroyed me, or was it just a part of who I was becoming? It was hard to imagine myself as anything but the person who had been hurt. I had spent so long being the victim in this story that I hadn't considered how I was going to move forward. I had been holding on to the past, to the person I had been before all of this happened, but that person didn't exist anymore. The betrayal had changed me. It had altered the way I saw love, the way I saw myself. I was no longer the person who blindly trusted, who believed in happily ever afters. I was now someone who understood that love could be fragile, that trust could be shattered in an instant. I was someone who had learned that no one is immune to hurt, no matter how much you love them. But despite the pain, despite the anger and the confusion, I realized something else. I was stronger than I had ever given myself credit for. I had survived this. I had gotten through the worst of it, and I was still standing. It didn't mean that the pain would go away overnight, or that I would ever fully trust again, but it did mean that I had the ability to heal. The question now was whether or not I wanted to try. Did I want to attempt to rebuild something that had been destroyed? Or was it time to walk away for good? I didn't have the answers, but for the first time in a long time, I realized that the choice was mine. I didn't have to live in the shadow of his betrayal. I didn't have to allow his actions to define my future. I needed to let go of the idea that we could go back to what we were. We couldn't. The past was gone, and no amount of apologies, no amount of pleading, would bring it back. I had to decide what kind of future I wanted, and I had to do it for myself, not for him. In the end, it wasn't about forgiveness or revenge. It wasn't about staying or leaving. It was about me, about finding my own peace, my own closure. I had to stop being defined by the betrayal and start being defined by how I chose to move forward. The path ahead was uncertain, and I didn't know where it would lead. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let this define me forever. I was ready to start over, to rebuild, to reclaim the person I had lost in the wreckage. As I walked away from the life we had built together, I didn't know what was next, but I knew I had the strength to face it. I had survived the worst, and now it was time to move on. No more waiting for someone else to fix me. The healing started with me, and for the first time in a long time, I was ready to take that first step. I couldn't escape the feeling of emptiness that had settled into my chest. Every part of me wanted to scream, to demand answers, to somehow fix the wreckage of what had once been a loving, secure relationship. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there was no fixing it. It wasn't just the physical act of betrayal that hurt. It was the betrayal of trust, the years of intimacy, the shared moments that now felt like they meant nothing. The man I thought I knew, the one who had been my partner, my best friend, had turned into someone unrecognizable. I didn't know what to do next. For days, I walked around the house like a ghost. Every corner seemed to whisper the lies, the things we had shared, and how they had all been tainted. The bedroom, once a place of comfort and connection, felt like a battlefield. The bed felt cold, even when he was beside me. His presence only reminded me of the weight of his betrayal, and I couldn't bear it. At night, I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together what had gone wrong. How had we arrived here? What had I missed? There had been moments of tension, but nothing that had seemed like it would lead to this. He had been distant for a while, yes, but hadn't I been distant too? I thought back to all the times I had convinced myself that we were just going through a rough patch, that everything would get better. But I was lying to myself. There had been no rough patch. There had been a slow erosion of trust, of love. And now it was all gone. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. I couldn't ignore the fact that the person I had given my heart to had discarded it like it didn't matter. And yet there was a part of me that still wanted to save him. Save us. I couldn't just give up without trying. I had loved him for too long. I had built a life around him, around us. Could we really throw all that away? But how could I forgive him? How could I look past the lies, the secret phone calls, the late nights, the whispered words to someone else? I couldn't even look at him without feeling disgusted. Every time he touched me, every time he tried to pull me close, I flinched. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the realization that everything had been a lie. Every hug, every kiss, every "I love you" might as well have been empty words. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I couldn't believe I had let this go on for so long. I had been so blind, so willing to ignore the warning signs, to believe that things would get better on their own. How foolish I had been. How naive. And now I was paying the price. I didn't know if I could ever trust him again. I didn't know if I could ever look at him without seeing the man who had broken me. He tried to talk to me, to explain himself. He kept apologizing, kept saying how sorry he was, how much he regretted it. But it was all too late. The words didn't mean anything anymore. They were just empty promises, just another attempt to erase what he had done. I didn't want his apologies. I didn't want his regrets. I wanted the truth. I wanted him to feel the pain I felt, to understand how deeply he had wounded me. But even that seemed impossible. I wasn't sure what I was expecting from him. Maybe I wanted him to beg for my forgiveness, to prove that he would do anything to make things right. But that didn't come. All I saw was a man who was terrified of losing everything, but still unable to comprehend the gravity of his actions. He wanted to fix it, but how could we fix something so broken? How could we undo the damage he had caused? I began to pull away. I stopped answering his calls, stopped responding to his texts. I needed space, I needed time to think, to breathe. The last thing I wanted was to sit across from him and pretend like everything was okay. I needed to figure out if I even wanted to be with him anymore. I had to be honest with myself. I didn't know if I could forgive him. I didn't know if I wanted to. Every time I thought about it, the pain surged again, a deep ache that wouldn't go away. How could I ever trust him again? How could I ever look at him the same way? I couldn't even imagine it. But as much as I hated him for what he had done, I couldn't escape the fact that I still loved him. I hated the vulnerability it made me feel. It made me feel weak, like I was allowing him to hurt me all over again. But I couldn't help it. Love doesn't disappear overnight, even when it's been betrayed. It clings to you, pulls at you, forces you to question everything you thought you knew about yourself and your relationship. And yet, there was still a part of me that couldn't let go. A part of me that wanted to fight for him, for us. I didn't know what that fight would look like, but I knew it was a fight I wasn't sure I could win. But how do you fight for something when you don't know if it's worth saving? How do you move forward when the person who has hurt you is the one you once trusted more than anyone? I wasn't sure what the answer was. I didn't know if there even was an answer. I spent days in limbo, unsure of what I was supposed to do next. Was I supposed to confront him again? Demand more answers? Could I even stand to be in the same room with him without wanting to scream, without feeling the weight of what he had done to me? Or should I just walk away, leave him behind, and never look back? But it wasn't that easy. I didn't know if I was ready to give up on everything we had built, even though it felt like everything had already been destroyed. Walking away would be admitting defeat, but staying would be a constant reminder of the pain he had caused me. I didn't know where to go from here. I didn't know if I was capable of forgiveness, but I knew that I couldn't keep living in this suffocating limbo. I needed a decision. I needed to find some semblance of peace, whether it was with him or without him. I needed to decide if we could rebuild, if I could rebuild. But no matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't bring myself to make that choice yet. I waited for him to speak, to say something that would explain away the overwhelming evidence that had just shattered everything I thought I knew about us. But he didn't. The silence between us was deafening. He kept his eyes on me, a mixture of confusion and guilt clouding his expression. It was clear he wasn't expecting me to know. Maybe he thought I wouldn't figure it out, or that the truth would never come to light. But here I was, holding the phone, holding the truth. The messages were still fresh in my mind, and I felt a mix of anger and betrayal welling up inside me. I couldn't even look at him the same way anymore. Every time I tried, I saw those words on the screen, the way his tone changed when he spoke to her. He had been lying to me for so long, and I had been too blind, too trusting to see it. I didn't know how long we stood there, locked in that uncomfortable silence. He seemed to be waiting for me to say something, but what could I say? What words could possibly express the betrayal I was feeling in that moment? He finally broke the silence, his voice shaky as he tried to sound casual, too casual. I can explain, he said. It's not what you think. I could feel the anger rising in me, my hands trembling as I fought to keep my voice steady. Not what I think. You think I don't understand what I saw? You think I don't know what that is? My voice cracked, but I didn't care. I saw the messages. I saw the way you talked to her. Don't try to tell me this isn't what I think it is. He took a step toward me, his hand reaching out like he thought that would somehow make this better. But I pulled back, my body stiff with a sudden wave of disgust. Don't touch me, I snapped. The words came out harsher than I meant, but I couldn't help it. His touch felt foreign now. I never wanted you to find out this way, he said, his voice a mix of regret and defensiveness. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I swear. I don't know what happened. I got caught up. Caught up? I repeated, my voice rising with disbelief. Caught up in what? In lying to me? In betraying me? I took a step forward, not in any attempt to approach him but to make sure he could feel the distance between us. You don't get to explain this away. You don't get to act like this is just some mistake or misunderstanding. I'm sorry, he said, his voice dropping. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Of course you didn't, I said bitterly, shaking my head. But it did. You went behind my back, and now you're standing here telling me you didn't mean for it to happen? How do you expect me to believe you? How do I even look at you the same way again? The room felt suffocating. His apology, his words, they didn't matter anymore. I had already seen the truth. I had already seen how little he cared about me, about us. You don't get it, I continued, my voice barely above a whisper. You broke my trust. You shattered everything I believed in. And now you want me to just forgive you? To pretend like this didn't happen? He looked like he was about to speak again, but I held up my hand to stop him. I don't want your excuses. I don't want to hear why you did it. I want to know why you thought you could get away with it. Why you thought I wouldn't find out. He opened his mouth, probably to say something about how much he regretted it, about how he hadn't meant for things to get this bad, but the words caught in his throat. There was nothing left to say. Nothing that could fix this. You've broken me, I said, the words leaving me in a hollow breath. You've broken us. And I don't know if I can ever fix it. I could see the panic in his eyes now, but it was too late. The damage was done. The moment we had been standing in, the quiet before the storm, had passed. There was no going back. I don't know what to do, he admitted, his voice soft, almost pleading. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't know how we got here. Well, we're here now, I said, my voice cold and distant. And I don't know what we're supposed to do next. I don't even know if I can look at you the same way anymore. I don't know if I can ever forget what you've done. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. He opened his mouth again, but no words came. There was nothing more he could say. The betrayal had been too deep, the trust broken too thoroughly for any apology to heal the wound. I turned away from him, my heart racing in my chest. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. But the tears came anyway, hot and angry, spilling down my face as I fought to keep them in check. I had never felt so small, so vulnerable. I had never felt so completely alone in a room full of people. He reached out, his hand hovering in the air like he wanted to touch me, but I stepped back, shaking my head. No, I whispered. Don't. Just don't. He stood there, his shoulders slumped, his face a mask of regret, but nothing changed. The damage was done. I was done. I had thought I knew him. I had thought I could trust him. But that man, the one I had built my life with, was gone. In his place was a stranger, someone who had betrayed me, someone who couldn't see how much he had broken me. I don't know how we go forward from here, I said, my voice hollow. But I know I can't stay here with you. Not after what you've done. There was no more fighting. No more yelling. Just an overwhelming silence, the kind that settles over everything, making you wonder if it was ever worth it in the first place. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. Things would never be the same again. And the bed we once shared, the life we had built, was now just a distant memory of a time that felt like it had never been real. I had always thought we had the kind of relationship that was built to last. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. We met years ago, young and full of energy, and over time, we built a life together. The late-night talks, the laughter, the deep connection that seemed unshakable. In the beginning, we were inseparable, both emotionally and physically. Every touch felt like a promise. Every glance held a secret we only shared. But somewhere along the way, things changed. I can't pinpoint exactly when, but the cracks started to show. It was small at first. The distant stares, the quieter dinners, the moments when we were in the same room but felt miles apart. I'd chalked it up to stress, to life. Work pressures. We both had careers that demanded a lot. Our social lives were busy, and we had so many obligations to attend to. I figured it was just a rough patch. After all, who doesn't go through rough patches? But as time passed, those patches seemed to stretch on longer and longer, becoming the new normal. I started noticing that our bed, once a place of intimacy, where we'd unwind and reconnect, felt empty. Not in the literal sense, but emotionally. He would stay up late, glued to his phone, even when we were both supposed to be winding down. I tried to get his attention, but he was always too tired or too busy to talk. When we did talk, it was about the logistics of life, work, bills, upcoming family gatherings, nothing that truly mattered anymore. I would often look at him during our brief moments of connection, searching for the man I had fallen in love with, but it was like he had disappeared. Then the small signs started. At first, I thought I was imagining things, but as they piled up, I knew something wasn't right. His phone, always face down, always on silent. He'd leave the room to take calls, and I'd catch the flicker of his smile, a smile that seemed different from the one he gave me. He would linger in the bathroom a little too long, texting under the covers when I was asleep, and sometimes, when I glanced at him, I could see that familiar unease in his eyes, a hesitation that wasn't there before. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. That maybe he was going through something, maybe it was work, maybe it was just the stress of everything piling up. But in the back of my mind, a nagging feeling began to grow. I would catch him in moments when he wasn't looking, and it was like I could see a stranger staring back at me. Someone I didn't recognize. It wasn't until the night everything changed that I realized how far gone we were. I had come home early from work that evening, an unexpected break in my routine, and found the house unusually quiet. No music playing. No movement. It felt off, like a storm was brewing, but it hadn't yet hit. I walked toward the bedroom, thinking he was just resting after a long day. But when I reached the door, I saw it. The phone on the bed, buzzing uncontrollably, face up. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was a work message, an urgent call. But then I noticed the name. It was a name I didn't recognize. The message was brief, too brief, and the tone seemed too familiar. It felt like a secret, one I wasn't meant to uncover. I stood frozen for a moment, staring at the phone. The buzzing continued, almost like it was beckoning me. I felt like I was going mad. My mind raced, jumping from one thought to the next, questioning whether I should check it or walk away, pretend I never saw it. But curiosity gripped me. I picked up the phone, ignoring the pounding in my chest. I had to know. The conversation was there, staring back at me. There was no ambiguity, no room for interpretation. The messages were flirtatious, full of inside jokes and words that were meant only for someone else. Someone other than me. And as I read them, it hit me like a wave. This was it. This was the betrayal I had sensed but couldn't quite place. The truth was laid bare before me, and the weight of it crashed over me. I couldn't breathe. The room felt like it was closing in around me. I tried to compose myself, to put the phone down, but I couldn't. It felt like my world was unraveling, and all I could do was stare at the screen, seeing the words that meant everything and nothing at the same time. My hands shook as I set the phone back down, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by the truth that had just come to light. I walked out of the room, trying to gather myself. But all I could do was replay the images in my head, the things I had read, the implications, the realization that everything I had thought was secure had been shattered. When he came home later that evening, I didn't know what to say. The anger, the sadness, it was all there, but so was the fear. Fear of losing everything, of the years we had built together crumbling in front of me. He didn't know. He didn't know that I knew. And as he stepped into the house, I could feel it. The tension between us, a silent storm waiting to break. The phone, the messages. Everything felt so heavy, so impossible to ignore. It was clear that the connection we once shared was gone. The bed, the one place that had held all of our shared memories, felt like a distant memory of a time long past. There was no tenderness left between us, just an uncomfortable silence. That night, as I lay in bed beside him, I knew something had changed forever. The betrayal hung in the air, and though he slept soundly beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was sleeping next to a stranger. The bed that used to feel like home now felt like a battlefield. I didn't know how we had gotten here, but I knew we couldn't go back.